Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to In Real Life with Evan Halprin. I had to unfortunately take a slight hiatus. There was a change in my life, and that was the fact that I moved to the University of Alabama. I started college here, and that was not a difficult move, but the process was long getting everything ready and situated, and actually moving in, starting classes and everything was difficult. The move down from Jersey, I wasn't going to be able to continue making podcasts as I had. However, it seems that things have settled down. I've settled into a fairly normal couple of days here, a fairly normal schedule that I have now, and you should start to see more and more podcasts come out more and more consistently as they had before and during the summer, and especially that should be true with the political event upcoming, which is, of course, as we know, the presidential election. The two candidates, as you know, Trump and Kamala, I already do have my mail in ballot. I don't have it marked down yet. However, I will be voting for Mr. Donald J. Trump and Mr. Mark Vance. And that's all well and good. However, we still do have some time before that happens, and so we still have to look at trends. Before we get into that, though, I do realize I just said Mark Vance. I did mean J.D. Vance. I don't know who Mark Vance is. I apologize. It was a slip up on my part. Again, just getting back into this. Stay with me here, please. But today's topic is going to be Kamala Harris's predictable fall in the polls. Both polls and betting markets, actually, as we will talk about. And then we'll get into a gaffe that not really her, but that production team made during her town hall in Las Vegas earlier in the week. And so, as we have seen, the season of joy and love might be coming to an end. Very shortly, it might be time to make America great again. Again. And this is something that should have been very obvious when choosing a candidate. Right. Kamala Harris, very clearly not a good candidate for a multitude of reasons, which we will absolutely get into. So, first off, of course, she's really just a DEI candidate. And what I mean by that is that when Biden was picking a vice president candidate in 2020, he said he was picking a black woman. Now, there have been the controversies of whether Kamala Harris is actually black or not. For this all intents and purposes here, I'm not caring about those. What I will care about is the fact that when you are picking a candidate, if you have to pick from a subset of a minority, you are automatically skipping over other qualified candidates, and in this case, people that happen to be much more qualified candidates. Right? When you are the Democrat Party, you already are at a disadvantage because your policies don't actually work, and you are having to choose a candidate that has faulty policies. You still have kind of almost a number line of candidates, right? There's variance. You have horrible candidates, and such as Kamala Harris, really, and then you have just bad candidates. Someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who we'll talk about more coming up, and then also being a DEI candidate in the fact that when Biden dropped out of the race, you really had a division in the Democrat Party. And this division was between those who wanted Kamala Harris to be chosen as the candidate and thought that it would be unfair, racist, sexist to skip over her because of her being black and being a woman. And then you had the actual semi-intelligent people in the Democrat Party who know, even in terms of Democrat candidates, how bad she is. And she was also a poor performing candidate, right? When we think back to the Democrat nomination, the Democrat debates in 2020 to choose a candidate, right? You had the front runners, right? You had the Bernie Sanders, you had the Joe Biden's, obviously, and he won, the Bloombergs even for a while there. and then you had the poor performing candidates, right? So Kamala Harris being one of them, and this forced her to drop out of the race fairly early because of how poorly she was polling, how poorly the donations she were getting was going, and especially she dropped out after her escapades against Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard currently identifies as an independent, right? She has kind of come over more to the light side. I don't know who she's voting for in this election. I'm assuming it will be an independent, but if she had to choose between Trump and Kamala, I would wager all of my life savings, which granted is like $400, but I would wager that she would not vote for Kamala and would in fact vote for Trump, because she's more of a common sense candidate in the fact that she knows what policies work and doesn't work. It's why she changed from a Democrat to an independent. However, thinking back to what I said about there being a kind of spectrum of poor Democrat candidate to good Democrat candidate, right? Tulsi Gabbard would have been on the good side of Democrat candidates. This isn't to say that I support her much. I support her somewhat because of her ability to admit that she was wrong in identifying as a Democrat. However, if we're thinking about the full spectrum of politics, right, Democrat to Republican, I would still say obviously she's worse than good Republican candidates. People like Vivek Ramaswamy, people like Trump, like J.D. Vance, and even poor Republican candidates. In my view, someone like a Marco Rubio, I would still take over Tulsi Gabbard. We're getting a little bit off track here. We're supposed to be talking about how horribly Kamala Harris is doing, so I'm going to get back to that. She also, the third reason why it should have been very obvious when choosing her that the season of love and joy would be ending fairly soon, right? You have her poor performance as vice president. You have Joe Biden doing a horrible job not managing the economy, not managing foreign policy, doing everything really horribly. Now, while Kamala Harris doesn't exactly have control over that, that does reflect poorly on Kamala Harris. And then you do have Joe Biden coming out now and saying that he actually has, as he stepped back from being the candidate for the 2020 election, he's giving Kamala Harris more power, the ability to do more. Things are not getting better. That reflects very poorly on Kamala Harris. And then when you ask about policy, which people haven't really done, but Kamala Harris did come out and basically say, "Yeah, I'm going to continue doing the same thing Joe Biden is doing, but I'm going to expect a different result." Right? Joe Biden, I get it. Right? The prices of everything are high right now. Inflation's not good. You're struggling. People are living paycheck to paycheck. Things of this, but I'm going to keep the same policies Joe Biden has in place, the policies that caused this economic trouble, but we're going to expect a different result, same policies. That's the definition of insanity, right? Doing something again the same way and expecting a different result, literally insane. And so this is why it's really just should have been extremely obvious when choosing the candidate that Kamala Harris was not the way to go. Now, this is not to say that she won't beat Trump. It's completely possible that she wins. I hope to God she doesn't, very obviously. However, even with her poor polling in the polls and her falling in the polls, still it is possible she does beat Trump. You still have the Democrat cesspools in places such as California where they just honestly don't care about how bad the policies are and how they affect themselves or anybody else. They will continue to vote Democrat. Oh, recently, Democrat presidential candidates in general have predictively underperformed their polling. Even Joe Biden, Trump was not supposed to win against Hillary Clinton, according to polling. He did win. He wasn't supposed to win against Joe Biden, and he did not win. However, he did outperform his polling. Um, this is this happens for a multitude of reasons. The Democrat presidential candidates underperforming their polling. First of all, just in general, it seems that the Democrat people that get polled, they're more outspoken, they're more willing to be polled. If you took an average sample of Republicans and Democrats, it seems to be the case that the more outspoken crowd happens to be Democrats, and they are more willing to be polled. So that could be one of the reasons, right? You have to do multivariate analysis on something like this. There is no one reason. Another possible reason is that less of those with opinions tend to make it to the polls for the Democrat Party. This could be because they tend to trend younger, and younger people typically are less likely to vote. It also could be you again have to do multivariate analysis on that. That less of people with strong opinions on the Democrat side make it to the polls. My best guess would be the age. Younger people tend to vote less often. However, that's really just a guess. What is not a guess is that Trump supporters tend to not respond to polls. That is something that has been seen, has been statistically backed up, which is could be a reason why recently Democrat presidential candidates have underperformed their polling. Going back to elections, we see the Republican candidate in Donald Trump, and typically Trump supporters, MAGA Americans, typically not tend to not respond to polls. Could be again multitude of reasons. One of those reasons could be that they are typically the don't tread on me crowd, where they just kind of want to be left alone, do their own thing, and those people do again tend to trend toward the Republican side. Again, another reason of that could be the Republican advantage in the Electoral College. Could potentially be a reason why Democrats predictably underperform polling, because polling is just a 1-to-1. Everybody gets an equal vote, and as we see in the Electoral College, that's not exactly what happens, right? To avoid tyranny of the majority. So that could be another reason. And that isn't to say that what is happening now is that Kamala is underperforming. Kamala could be overperforming, or we could see Kamala overperform her polling. It's just a trend. It's just something to look out for. It's just something to be careful about when reading polling. Here's another trend, however. Kamala Harris is losing her grasp of her lead in the polls. And this happened both in the polls and in the betting markets. And I'll talk about the betting markets a little bit later, something that Elon Musk brought up actually on Twitter. He had a tweet about it, which I won't read, but I will parrot one of his points. But in the polls, by the mainstream media, by the legacy media, we have three big polls. We have NBC News, ABC News, and the CBS poll from last month and this month, and the comparison. So last month, NBC's poll had Kamala Harris leading by 6%, by 47% to Kamala Harris, 41% to Donald Trump. And this month, it was taken again, and Kamala Harris was now only up 1%, 47% to 46%. So you saw Kamala Harris not change, but Donald Trump move up a little bit. That could be because Robert Kennedy dropped out a while ago, and so you see the independents kind of flaking out to where they were going, or the people who were going to vote for Robert Kennedy. The 6% does match about what Robert Kennedy was getting, a little bit less usually, but that could be one of the reasons. And then the ABC News poll last month also had her up by 6%. This was a little bit different. This was a 52% for Kamala Harris to 46% for Donald Trump. This month it was seen she was only up 2. Excuse me. It was seen she was only up 2% from 50% to 48%. So the ABC News poll actually had her losing the same amount as he gained. So that maybe has a little bit less to do with independence. It's also all people they poll, where they're polling. There's so much variance in these. These are just trends. They're just something to look at. CBS poll last month had her up by 4%, and a 52 to 48%. And this month they had her only up 3%, 51 to 48. So that he stayed the same, she lost. Right? So there's so much variance in these polls, and there's so much that could go wrong. Again, you have error rates, all that different stuff. However, if you do look at political betting markets, Donald Trump is leading by usually 3 or 4%, and he has maintained a pretty steady lead all throughout. And this is something that Elon Musk said, potentially more accurate are betting markets than polls because of the effect of money being wagered. Right? If someone called you up and said, "Hey, hello, I'm with NBC. Who are you voting for?" Right? So first of all, they have to come to you. All you have to do is pick up the phone. You don't really have to do anything. You don't have to sign up for these. You just get a phone call and they ask you a question. They say maybe they ask you some personal information about yourself, right? Your name, yada yada, your age, but maybe they don't, right? Maybe the only thing they ask you is, who are you voting for? Well, you can say the person you're voting for. You can also say the person you might vote for. You can also say the person you're not going to vote for, just to throw it off, because like polling doesn't actually matter, right? But in betting markets, you actually have to. So poly market is the main one of where Trump is up, I think 4%. You have to go to them. You have to go. You have to get on your device, computer, phone, whatever you're using. You have to transfer the money from your bank, excuse me, to the website, and then you actually have to bet the money, and you're wagering, right? There's a possibility that you lose. So potentially, because of that, those couple of reasons, betting markets could be more accurate than polls. Again, just a trend, something to look at, something to look out for. However, we should look at why this is, why these trends are happening, what could be the potential reasons for this. Now, really what it could be is the fake enthusiasm that was built up by the mainstream media and the legacy media, the left-wing media, failed to stir up real enthusiasm. Right? The left had a plan, which was, we're going to pick a horrible candidate. Everybody knows she's a horrible candidate, but we're going to spin it like she's not a horrible candidate, right? Everybody on the right is weird. You're all weirdos, and we are the side of love. We are the side of joy, yada yada. Right? And that could have worked. For whatever reason, it failed to have worked. Everybody saw through it, saw it was a charade, saw it was a facade, and it didn't work. And now you have kind of the letdown of that, where the couple percentage of people that did actually buy into that are beginning to buy out of it. And another reason is the poor choice in the vice president candidate in Tim Walz. The real candidate should have been Mark Shapiro. I heard, this could be completely false, but I have heard that the reason they didn't pick him was because it was said that he was smarter than her, and they didn't want that kind of comparison, that contrast of an actually good speaker in Mark Shapiro, a mid-tier candidate versus a horrible candidate in Kamala Harris, right? Because when you pick a candidate in Kamala Harris, again, someone on the spectrum that's on the horrible side of the spectrum, if you put up a good vice president against her, or with her, actually, I apologize for that. If you put up a good vice president candidate with her, now every time you bring them out together, it's more and more apparent how bad of a candidate she is. So you have to pick someone like Tim Walz, who's completely lack of competency. And this is something that he shares with Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris just completely lack of ability to speak in front of a large audience. She doesn't really know what she's saying. And for a very long while, she didn't have even a platform link on her website about what her policies were. And something that's really, really not good is that she, for whatever reason, cannot speak without a teleprompter. I'm not sure why this is. She is pretty much a lifelong politician, but for whatever reason, she did not gain the skills to be able to speak without a teleprompter. And this was shown most recently on Thursday in Las Vegas, during what was supposed to be an unscripted town hall. And whoever was in control of the cameras was apparently not a Kamala Harris supporter, because the camera panned around and an angle was shown that had the back of Harris and was supposed to show the audience. And it did show the back of Harris, and it did show the audience. And what it also showed was that Kamala Harris was very clearly reading off of a teleprompter. Now, sometimes reading off of a teleprompter is not a bad thing, right? I have notes for this podcast. Absolutely, I don't just go and sit down and talk for an hour, or even the short ones, even the 20-minute ones. I don't just sit down and talk. I research. I take my notes, right? However, I'm not lying to you about it. I will sit here and I will tell you everything that I do. I will tell you when I started, I used to literally script 95% of what I would say. Even the hour shows, or the hour episodes, right? I would sit there and I would write out the actual jokes that I would make, everything of that. And as I excuse me, and as I have gotten better, I have done that less. I still have my notes. I still have some bullet points, things I want to say. But I'm able to do it a little bit quicker, a little bit more off the cuff. I'm not lying to you about that. When you are a candidate running for president, running for the highest office in the land, running for the most powerful office in the world, you don't get to lie about your lack of ability to use a teleprompter, or the lack of using a teleprompter, right? If you're using a teleprompter, that's fine. Trump uses teleprompters all the time. He complains about them to his audience. He literally has complained before about how his teleprompters don't work like 20% of the time, he said. Right? He's not lying to you about it. Kamala Harris is lying to you about it. And then she tries to get the mainstream media to cover it up, or they cover it up. They cover it up for her. I don't know if she asks the mainstream media to cover it up, but they do, right? They tried to debunk it. Forbes put out an article titled "Right-Wing Influencers Falsely Accuse Kamala Harris of Using a Teleprompter at Town Hall." That was the fucking headline. I apologize for my language. That's baffling. Why? Because there's plenty of clips on the internet. Go find them now. Look up Kamala Harris uses teleprompter at Town Hall, and you will find the clips, right? The left wants you to not believe your lying eyes and your lying ears. They want you to believe them. They want you to believe them. Don't believe yourself. Don't believe your senses. Believe them, right? I'm the opposite. Don't believe what I say, or don't take what I say blindly. I wouldn't lie to you, but don't just blindly believe it. Please go watch the clip for yourself. There's plenty of clips on the internet. You found this podcast. You can find those clips. Go watch it. If you don't believe me, you've probably already seen it, though. Right? And this is a difference to think about when you're going to the polls in November. Right? One side of the political spectrum reliably works in the dark. They will deceive and they will lie. They will distort the truth, and they have policies that do not, never have, and never will work. The other side has issues, absolutely. For a long time, there has been a lack of policies to fight for. Rather, they have been fighting against progressive policies. This is one of the issues not an issue. This is a struggle of being a conservative, is you are working to conserve. So sometimes it's hard to see the light of what you're fighting for. It seems like you're fighting against. This is one of the things that Vivek Ramaswamy points out constantly, and why I believe he will be a leader of the Republican Party for years to come, hopefully decades. Hopefully one day I will be able to work alongside him in his journey. But overall, one side has policies that do work and have made things better in the past and continue to make things better, and one side has policies that don't work, haven't worked, will never work, make things worse. So when you go to vote, right, think about who you are better under, right? You have Trump, you have 4 years, really 3 years of Trump, you have the COVID year, but even the COVID year, economically, really, we were doing better than we were under Biden. And you have 3 years of Biden, 3.5 years of Biden, 6 months of Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris has admitted she will continue what they would like to believe is Biden's legacy. And so when thinking about it like that, you have 4 years of Kamala Harris. You can compare those to 4 years of Trump. Who are you better under? It's really not hard. Statistically, there is an answer. It's just you have to figure it out for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I actually can't really express with words how great it feels to be back, sitting here, doing this. I miss this. It feels amazing. I want to thank each and every one of you listening because you allow me to do this. You give me someone to talk to. Without you, I would be sitting here talking to the wall. But because you are able to tune in and listen, you give my thoughts some meaning. I will continue to do this more consistently now that I've kind of settled into a schedule. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you very, very soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.